Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel. Below me this time is Justin, and we're back for another one of these videos where we do a retrospective about the Blessed Curse archetypes and tokens in general, since it's now been about a year since Feast of Hemlock Veil came out, so it's a good time to revisit where these cards and tokens and archetypes sit today. So, kind of the we don't have a great thesis for this one like we did for the last one, but maybe the main topic is like, are curse tokens worth it? Are the curse builds worth it? So what does that mean? What does that actually look like? So, Justin, do you have any introductory thoughts before we start diving into this?
Uh, the design of curses has always been very interesting from a power level standpoint because I feel like it's been the opposite of what Bless was, right? Where
Hmm.
curse tokens were very strong in Innsmouth and became less strong in Feast of Hemlock Vale, where I think it was the opposite for Bless tokens. So I do think that it has a very interesting kind of like mirror, well, like not a mirror, but like a just a different like journey to blessed tokens that makes it a very interesting companion piece to our previous conversation.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to start with just talking about curses in general. If you are not familiar, a curse token is a token that gets put into the bag, either via play a card or sometimes there's some encounter cards that put them into the bag. We should mention Innsmouth for some of that later. And it has the effect of -2 to your skill value, and you draw another token. So you have a cumulative modifier after that, and you then remove the curse token at the end of the test from the bag. So it's just a temporary -2 to your tests. And sometime in the future, you don't know when you're going to draw them, maybe.
Yeah.
But this has the effect of like three things could happen, right? So either let's just say you're, I don't know, let's say you're 2 up on a test or something, and you draw a curse token and then a -4. This has no effect on your test. You were failing this test anyway with a -4, right? So nothing gained, nothing lost.
Mhm.
Another thing that could happen is you draw the curse token and you draw a 0. And this time, you do still pass the test, right? So doesn't actually matter here either. You were 2 up.
Mhm.
Now you're just even. It does matter in the sense that if you're trying to succeed by a certain number, like succeed by 2 or succeed by exactly something else, the curse token, I suppose, does matter. But as far as just passing or failing a test, no change. And then there's the case of you have a curse token into a -2 where you would have passed the test if not for the curse token. So these are like three possibilities. Certainly, you also could draw more than one curse token and have an even
Yeah.
lower skill value. That does happen. But I just want to kind of introduce when people first think about curse tokens, this is the thing they're thinking about. Absent of any other player card effects, does this affect my ability to pass the test? So, of these three possibilities, in your experience, what's the most common thing to happen?
People are not going to like when I say this, but there's okay. Let me preface this because I think it's very important to set the scene for what is a curse deck and what isn't a curse deck,
Hmm.
right? So, for example, if you are playing Faustian Bargain or Promise Makes Power or Promise of Power or Deep Knowledge, you are not a curse deck if you are just playing those cards,
Hmm.
right? If you're just using those for value, you are just using the downside of the card to pay for the upside of the card, right? So Faustian Bargain can give you 5 resources and it costs 0 because its cost also adds 2 curse tokens, right? That does not make you a curse deck. If you are looking at adding curses all the time or taking advantage of curse tokens or mitigating the draw of curse tokens, then you're a curse deck. So I think the answer to that is kind of entirely dependent on what you're doing. And if you are not a curse deck, if you are just playing Faustian Bargain Promise of Power, I think the middle one is the most likely option to have happened in the average, where people are going to remember the ones that they fail because of curse tokens a lot more than the ones that they pass because of curse tokens.
Hmm.
I read online someone recently said the opposite, and I think you're crazy because people are not like that. People are more pessimistic than they are optimistic. They're going to remember the worst times over the good times. Um, and I think that on average, curse tokens don't matter. And I think a big reason for this is the way that Arkham this is speaking of just like when you're playing just a Faustian bargain. You're not a curse deck. That's like an important conversation we're going to have in this video,
Hmm.
right? When you're a curse deck and when you're not a curse deck. But the way that Arkham is shaped up, a lot of this gameplay is about getting your stat as high as possible, right? Um, and that means the curse tokens are going to hit less. Like there are times when I've been up 6, and I drew a curse token into the -4, for example, and I was like, curse token, you didn't do anything. Of course, there are times when I draw the curse token and fail, right? But it's like the same when you draw like an auto fail, right? Where it's like you have to look at the context of the test that you're taking as well. If I drew a curse token and like a -4 when I was trying to do a deduction turn, with auto practice makes perfect, that would really hurt, right?
Hmm.
But it would hurt the same as if it was an auto fail. But if I drew a curse token to a -4 when I was just doing a basic investigate, it would suck because I failed and spent an action. But then I also lost the curse token, which means that it's good. It's the same for an auto fail. That one would hurt a lot less.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
in my in my mind, it would be the middle one if you are just playing curse cards, but not necessarily a curse deck.
Right. So we're talking about the weaknesses on the next slide here, just because those add in curses and you don't have much you can do about that without other
Mhm.
player cards. But you're right that the curses don't just appear out of nowhere. They are getting you something when you played them, right? The Faustian
Yep.
bargain, of course, is a great example. The downside is you might, emphasis on might, fail a test later, but you should be okay with that because you just got 5 resources for nothing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the nothing is not nothing. It is a chance that you fail something in the future. So, stop complaining, right?
Yeah.
That was the point of the card.
Yeah.
But you're right that it doesn't happen all that often. And yeah, so like, what are the ways to mitigate? We'll talk about this in a bit. But also another part of the conversation, and I might as well just show the curse weaknesses here too, is how many curses are in the bag for this to even matter,
Mhm.
right? How often do you take tests is also part of that. Properly as well. So Crisis of Faith here, this is Sister Mary's signature weakness, so you're not going to see this unless you're playing Sister Mary, but it has the chance of putting a whole lot of curse tokens in the bag, and you need to probably do something about that and not just, hope that you never draw them. Or
Mhm.
you just take the horror instead, right? Dread Curse, I think this is your favorite weakness that just shows up in
It's game days
your game
all the
days,
time.
right? There's 2
Yeah.
copies of it. I think that's partly why. And you just have
Yeah.
to like know that you get a bunch of random basic weaknesses. This just might show up and randomly add 5 curse tokens. And to me, that's the number.
Yep.
If there's gonna be like 4 or 5 or more curses in the bag, then you need to start thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think that in the same vein, I do think that I've done through so many dread curses that it's literally just a war of attrition for the number 5.
Hmm.
But the problems with dread curses, you're not getting that value to make up for those curse tokens. They're literally
Exactly.
the weakness. But I do agree that 5 is the number, which we will be talking about in the upcoming slide. So I don't want to get too deep into it
Hmm.
before we don't give a cursed follower his time in the sun.
Yeah. So that is the last weakness here, and maybe one of the reasons I had this as a video idea for some time before I think we made it into this trilogy is that when we played a sealed run together, I was Winifred and I had the Accursed Follower in my deck, and I think you were Charlie. And I thought this guy was a nightmare. And the reason why was because, and I think this is just part of the whole conversation about like how you deal with these curse tokens and how many before it becomes a problem. Um, as a rogue, dealing with a limited card pool I was just like very annoyed by having to draw the curse tokens. And the
Mhm.
answer wasn't just get up higher because I couldn't. It was like I
Yep.
couldn't build my deck that way. I wish I could have. And he was just a nightmare to go after in a big map like
Yep.
Edge of the Earth. Sometimes we couldn't even get to the location since it was, locked away somewhere. And I'm not going to say I failed a lot of tests, but it reduced some of those succeed by effects that Rogue really wanted, and
Mhm.
it was annoying. I'm not going to say it was awful, but if I could spend 2 actions to just get rid of a weakness instead of having to deal with this guy every scenario, then I would have preferred to do that.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's like the dread curse that this guy could add more than the dread curse depending on when you draw him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the fact that like they're always there. With dread curse, you know that number is going down and it can't actually go back up unless you put that number up yourself by cycling through your deck which in theory you should get more advantage out of,
That's right.
or
Yeah.
you're using putting curse tokens into the deck. A cursed follower is just always adding a curse token, which means you actually can never really like get ahead of him unless you're drawing like one curse token a turn and not failing those tests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's kind of soft once you can deal with him, but that's just not
Oh yeah.
always in the cards, right? It's just,
I will say though, most of the time I've seen this guy played, people just like let him do his thing, which is kind of like good and bad,
yeah,
because I do think that I agree it's a lot better when you kill him. It's actually if I can go on a little tangent here,
sure.
I played Arkham with a new player a while ago, and their weakness was a cursed follower, and they went and killed it, and I was like, wait, you can do that? Because I think it is better threat assessment, being like, this guy is creating issues, we should kill him, and I think those drip curse tokens do actually matter quite a bit in the long term.
hmm Yeah, and you're right. Like if you are playing a deck that just gets to, stacks your number to 8, who cares?
Yeah.
But that's just not every deck. I think it probably is your deck is better if you do that in most player counts. But that's just not the case in every deck. So I do have to like highlight that curses do matter if your deck isn't prepared for them, and that's kind of the point of these introductory slides. Is like how do you get around the tests or the
Yeah.
curses. So mitigating them, one option of course is just to be up higher. And sometimes you mentioned a few minutes ago about if you're up 6 on a test, right, then you can avoid the -2 into a -4. Then you're going to pass the test. Of course, you could draw more than one curse token if there are more than one, and that would be unlikely, but
Mhm.
it can happen. And it's, as you say, just like an auto fail. You're gonna fail some tests. It's like the frost tokens in Edge of the Earth too.
Yeah.
But I think maybe that was the other problem. Like having frost tokens in addition to curse tokens is a bit of a nightmare too.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
and I
yeah.
think it's one of those things that people also, even I've seen this in the discourse for curse tokens, where as soon as you have curse tokens, you're suddenly like on a test that's important. You have to spend a resource you otherwise wouldn't spend. Like for example, let's just say simply committing an unexpected courage to be up
hmm
an additional 6 as opposed to an additional 4, right? And then people say, looking at that, and they say that curse tokens are bad. But I think like the better reframing of that is that sometimes the value of those curse tokens is worth it to just spend that card to pass the test that's important, right? Like the value proposition of that changes. So being up higher doesn't necessarily mean you're losing value on those curse tokens
hmm
unless you're trying to do it on every test. But likewise, you don't want to be up 4 on every test you take if you have to spend resources on it. So it's the same thing here. You don't need to be up 6 on every test you take unless it's the important test. So it's like spending those resources appropriately.
Yeah, there was a comment on the video that we did about like lessons we had to learn, and someone said, "Hey, um, you don't need to pass every test. You don't need to put
Yep.
everything into every test, because not all of them are a practice makes perfect deduction level 2 test, right? Some of them are
Yep.
just I'm gonna fail this one, and that's fine, or maybe I'll pass because the chaos bag isn't always that nasty.
Yep.
So committing everything you have every single test just because you're afraid of curse tokens is probably going to lose you the game because you don't actually have the resources for the important tests.
Yeah. And then likewise, another thing you can do is kind of change your play pattern. So an
hmm
example is if I am a guardian and there are no enemies on the board, I'll throw some basic investigates out because otherwise I would just be drawing cards I don't need, which means that now maybe I discover a clue, or I'm also just potentially removing some curse tokens from the bag as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You can just try to fish for them. All
Yeah.
right. Barring all that, there are some player cards that mitigate in some way. So we're going to talk about all of these because I think I just listed every card for most of these slides. But there's a couple of skill cards that deal with them. Skeptic is basically, I forgot about this card. It lets you treat Bless and Curse as +1 instead of its normal modifier. So there's a way of just dealing with the Curse tokens by changing the modifiers. Blasphemous Covenant over there in the bottom right is another way to do this, which I think is a really nice synergy card with Curse decks in general. But you're turning the -2 into a +1, which is kind of a benefit.
Mhm.
Dark Ritual, you can just seal the tokens away and not worry about drawing them. Not a great solution, but it's there.
It's great in Dexter. Bryn did some cool stuff there.
It's very, very good in Dexter. It makes a lot of sense since it is very cheap.
And from his cycle, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Covenants.
Yeah, so False Covenant, I think, is the one where you just say, all of those curse tokens that I added in,
Yeah.
who cares?
They're not real.
They're not real. So if you're worried about curse tokens and you have rogue access, you just take this. And I think I probably should have when we played the Winifred Charlie run. I think I had access to it and I was just like, I want to spend my XP doing something better. But it probably would have been worth it, given that I had a cursed follower as the weakness.
I am the biggest believer, and I'll say this all the time, that if anyone at your table is doing anything with curse tokens beyond just playing a 2 of Faustian Bargain
Mm-hmm.
or a Promise of Power, get a Covenant. Get False Covenant or Blasphemous Covenant if you can run it. It will make your life 100 times easier. I often actually just play this card in game days for 2 experience because I know people are going to play curse tokens. And then I'll just like, I don't need to stress about them. It's one of those things where they have given you the best solution to curse tokens for only 2 experience. You don't need to draw it. Take it. And you actually also saw this in when we did our curse run with Amanda. I spent my in the thick of it on a Blasphemous Covenant because I knew there were going to be a lot of curse tokens in the bag. And I was just like, I don't want to stress about them. And it just changes the math of those so much. The downside of Blasphemous Covenant is it pushes that problem onto your teammates. But like, that is very, very good for just like mitigating curse issues.
You can use these on your teammates too. So it's just that it exhausts, so you can only do it once per round. But I think these are just great solutions. It's 2 XP, right? If you don't have access to Rogue or Seeker, then I guess you need a different solution, but probably you're not playing cards that put the tokens in the bag in the first place, so it's not as big of a problem. And if someone on your team is putting them in and they refuse to put these in for you to help out, then they're griefing a little bit if they're not getting so much value out of it.
Do not trust them. Yeah. They should not house it for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. There's also Ritual Candles, the Taboo version, which we'll talk about later, I think. But that's just another way to turn the -2 on the curse tokens into a -1, essentially. I think that's a really good solution if you are Mystic or have access to Mystic. We'll talk a bit, I think, sprinkling in some discussion about our Daisy and Amanda run. But I thought that the Ritual Candles was going to be the solution for me for Daisy, and it turned out they weren't. And the answer for me was just get up higher. It turns out that higher education gives you the +2 for basically nothing.
You need. Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, it depends on the deck you're playing, but there are usually ways to get your skill value higher. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things that there's actually a lot of solutions to curse tokens. You just need to modify your game plan. You can't expect to do the same thing you always do, and then also just reap the benefits of curse token cost cards.
And that's what we're getting into next, which is why are you doing this? Why bother dealing with putting curse tokens in it? Because there are some very powerful cards, especially at level 0. We're doing all the Innsmouth cards first, but I think that's kind of the home where these cards lived, which is just like level 0 as a benefit. You get something absurd for basically just adding 1 or 2 curse tokens in. So we have Promise of Power, 4 wild icons. That's just like passing you a test.
Yeah.
It's a ward of protection, right?
It is. I actually play it over ward of protection now. It's... And like you can see the theory, it's actually just an unexpected courage, right? That's the theory. This is why would anyone play an unexpected courage? Turns out this is not an unexpected courage. I do love the moments though when your curse bag is empty of your token bag's empty of curses. You play Promise of Power and immediately draw it, and you're like, oh no, my actions have consequences. But yeah, just 4 wild icons, you're passing that test.
Yep. Probably. And it's interesting if there are, like 6 or 7 curses in the token bag, then it's actually helping you pass the test anyway, right? And it's mitigating, I mean, at the worst, it's maybe an unexpected courage, right? And that's not bad.
Yep.
Deep knowledge. I think of the three of these, this one is not as splashy because you can kind of get the drawing cards effect at level 0 with other cards, but this one doesn't cost you any resources. You can split up the cards. It's
Yeah,
just
that's nice.
nice. Um,
Yep.
Often people are playing these three, and then Faustian Bargain there at the bottom, because they want to add the curse tokens in anyway, right? And we'll see some of those payoffs in a second. But even if you're not, people like to play these cards. You said this about patron game days. People are just throwing them in decks because they're just
Yep.
easy to deal with.
Yeah, I can usually just know that there's going to be two Faustian bargains in every game I play.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I like
Yeah.
the ability to share the resources and
Yep.
cards. Like that's nice when you're playing with a, you know, well, even solo, it's good. But uh, 2, 3, 4 player games, it's really nice to say, actually, I don't need 5, I need 4.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
All right. So this is kind of like the reason you're playing them, at least for the power, but there's other payoff. Here's some more curse cost cards, though. Spirit of Humanity lets you heal for adding 2 curse tokens. Riestrad lets you do a pretty good fight for adding in 3 curse tokens. And then Stirring Up Trouble lets you discover 2 clues. So it's kind of like these are analogs to cards that don't deal with curses, but you'll notice that their cost is just basically nothing, right? Resource cost for Riestrad and Stirring Up Trouble is 0. Spirit of Humanity does cost a couple things because it is a an asset, but it's still pretty cheap to have a fast heal.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and this is like, yeah, like you said, the 0 cost just is like the cost is actually hidden in the text box of the card.
Mm-hmm. I do
Yeah.
like how Stirring Up Trouble. I played this one in the Daisy deck, and I want to say I never played it. Maybe it was once
Yeah.
because we had so many curses in the bag that I couldn't play it. I could not pay
Yeah.
that cost.
It is one of those things that's the interesting thing about Stirring Up Trouble. You actually don't play this in curse decks because it's same with a card that we're going to be talking about right away. This is not a card for curse decks. This is a card that has curse as a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you could play it in a curse deck if you don't have better ways of putting curse tokens in. It's just that there are better ways.
I think that's a big thing too. Is also if you're not playing, like if your team is like playing False Covenants as opposed to Blasphemous Covenants
Hmm.
too, because Blasphemous Covenant leaves it in and False Covenant takes it out.
That's right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's some more costs. Sort of justify the means lets you just pass a test, but just like Stirring Up Trouble, you need to add curse tokens equal to the difficulty in this case. Lucky Dice, kind of forgot about this one. This one allows you to add a curse token to redraw token.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think I've ever played this one. You must have played it
No,
once.
I did play it once. Yes, it's I don't even remember it really, but it is there. It is a curse synergy card. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then there's Gesh. This one is sort of curse energy. That the cost is like breaking the promise means that you have to add 10 curse tokens to the bag. So I've never played it where I'm just intending on doing that, but it's
But
a
I know people have.
yeah,
I know people have. Yeah.
it is funny. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's just more along the lines. Okay, so here are the ones where you actually want to pull the curse tokens. So Mystic and Seeker, for the most part, have these payoffs where you either want to draw them during a test or you want them in the bag to draw for other random reasons. So we've got Armageddon and Eye of Chaos. There's also Shroud of Shadows as the evade spell, and these basically give you a benefit for revealing a curse token during the attack or during the investigation. Armageddon gives you a way to, and they all give you a way to put a charge back on if you reveal the curse token, but or you could try to just put a damage on an enemy at your location. Eye of Chaos is discovering a clue. I have the upgraded Eye of Chaos here. Level 0/1 is just very similar to the level 0 Armageddon and vice versa. So what do you think of those mystic spells as payoffs for, like, why do I even want to do this? I would like to play a curse deck that reveals tokens this way.
So yeah, I think this is a very interesting conversation about my philosophy on curse decks, where for individual tests, I think that curse's payoff is revealing one curse token at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But Armageddon and the Eye of Chaos and by proxy Shroud of Shadows, they all want you to reveal them in batches. But the thing is, there's not a great way to actually do that. You have Favor of the Moon down in the bottom right, but that's only one token, right? So I think that unfortunately, most of the time for Armageddon and Eye of Chaos, you're seeing the effect is more so I'm using this to just replenish the charge that I spent,
Hmm.
right? Where with Bless, for example, the ability to draw a Bless token, the payoff is just in that one token. But in effects like Armageddon and Eye of Chaos, you want to be essentially revealing multiples, especially for the upgraded version. Like there's the fantasy of revealing like 4 curse tokens and then just being like, you get nuked, you get nuked, you get nuked, right? But I think the reality is that that isn't actually the thing that happens. You're drawing curse tokens one at a time. So
Hmm.
I think that the payoff for those are a lot less flashy than for the payoff for Gaze of Aurochs, which we have here, which, as we know, actually can get stuff done.
Yeah. So I guess I'll add here that here, unlike I think the Bless cards as much, it leans more into token manipulation effects in Mystic, especially. So access to Olive McBride, Katarina, the new um, ally from Drowned City, like getting you to draw curse tokens on command, or at least get a better chance of it, is kind of the way to go. And those cards aren't going to be on these slides, but just sort of keep in mind that how do you make this happen? Are you just drawing random cards or tokens and hoping to pull curses? Maybe you need to be playing Kohaku, who has a signature asset that lets him potentially draw a curse token. That's what makes these things go, but they're good payoffs, I think, for the effect if you can get them.
Yeah. Yeah. I say this for Bless decks all the time, and it's the same for Curse. You're not a Bless or Curse deck unless you can pull one of those tokens on command,
Hmm.
or alternatively, using effects like Gaze to take advantage of the tokens in the bag, right? So like you can't be a curse deck and you're just hoping it happens. You need to have some sort of control over that. So like Olive,
Yeah.
Katarina, Kohaku's book, Favor of the Moon are all like tickets to get there. Because I mean, like I think realistically, even though I was just like poo-pooing Eye of Chaos and Armageddon,
Yeah.
those just being an endless battery is still good, right? But I think that just like they show where Curse Token the fantasy and Curse Token the reality differ.
I think they're just combo decks, right?
Yeah.
And you just need a lot of pieces. We'll talk about this at the end too, but just to preview, like, are you playing this over shriveling only if you have all the pieces together?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember I tried Eye of Chaos somewhat early in my Arkham career in a 3-player game, and I was the only one adding the curse tokens in the bag, and it was awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just didn't work. Other people had to, help me out there because they were pulling the curse tokens, and it just failed miserably. I mean, it was fine for the, you still get your 6 clues off of it, but I wish it could have done so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because these cards do cost 1 more than their counterpart because there's the idea they don't run out of charges
Hmm.
or get more clues or damage from that.
Yeah, there's no downside, right? It's not like shriveling or right of seeking that has some sort of backfire effect. So
Yep.
they're just good, but they're pricey.
Yep.
And I think Armageddon has fewer charges. Yeah.
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 I think they. No, I
I,
don't think
I have Chaos,
Chaos
I think,
does,
has the
but
same as right of seeking and
yeah, because
clairvoyance.
Armageddon is 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, they're a little bit blurry on my
Oh,
screen, so I'm
sorry.
just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
going from
Armageddon
memory.
has
Yeah.
3.
Yeah. So it does have one less.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now I'm doing self reflection. I don't think the Daisy deck that I played had any way of for sure hitting the curse tokens. I think I was just hoping.
But I mean, you weren't playing Armageddon or Eye of Chaos, were you?
No, no, that's true. I
No,
was
but you were
not.
playing Gaze and Rod,
Hmm.
which fall into the my other use case for Curse, which is like if you are taking advantage of Curse tokens in other ways. So
Hmm.
while you were just like, because you weren't like me, like my philosophy was I was taking so many tests as Amanda, but I was still using Favor of the Moon,
Hmm.
right? But your philosophy was I have my Gaze and my Rod of carnomagos to use curse tokens, right? So it's not like the difference is like playing Armageddon and then being like, yeah, I'm gonna draw a curse token on this test. It's just gonna happen,
Right.
right? Versus Gaze of Aurochs, which is I have 10 curse tokens in the bag, I'm dealing 5 damage, right?
That's true. So like Gaze
Yeah.
and we'll see Rod in a little bit are different because you are drawing a large number of tokens at once.
Yeah.
And there's just much it's like having a Olive McBride or something on an Eye of Chaos. It's actually better than that,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I knew that there was like between 7 and 10 curses in the bag at all times. So
Yes. Yeah.
that is
So yeah,
another way you can deal with it.
and this is actually something to your original point, and we're probably going to talk about this. Actually, it's on the last point, so I'm going to save for that.
Hmm.
I'm not going to get into this too soon, but we'll be talking. I have a point later to
Hmm.
kind of go with this.
Yeah, and I just to compare to the blessed decks, at this point you've probably seen enough of the hopefully of the Carolyn Will York decks. I didn't have any way of like for sure getting the bless tokens out for Carolyn either. You did, of course, which
Mhm.
made more sense given the ancient covenant thing. But I think we were flooding the bag there enough where the blessing of Isis was like fine for doing what it was doing. But the payoff in that deck was not really about drawing the blessed tokens as much as it was using it as a resource where they were
Yep.
just in the bag in the first place. So
And, yeah, and then even then it goes to the whole combo nature where while you weren't having a plan to trigger Blessing of Isis, my Favor of the Sun
mhm.
could trigger Blessing of Isis on command if I just happened to draw a blessed token, right?
Yeah, so there's more than one way to do this, I think, which is cool.
Yes. Yeah, you just need to have a plan to how to take advantage of those curse tokens,
Hmm.
and whether that be using them in tests like Gaze or Garrod, or drawing them on command, is like you need to have some sort of way to take advantage of them
Hmm.
on command. That's kind of like what you need.
So the really good thing about Gaze, which I realize we've been talking about, but we didn't even mention it, as you know, it's on the screen there. Read it already, right?
Yeah.
You reveal 7 chaos tokens in the bag, and you don't remove the curse tokens that you draw. So that makes it very
Yep.
different than Armageddon or Eye of Chaos. You are just revealing them, and then you put them back in the bag, so it doesn't use up the tokens as a resource. So
Yep.
this card was great. I played it in Daisy, and it turns out you can just kill lots of things.
Yep.
I'm a big believer in the card now, but we had a lot going for it to support it, but it
Yes.
actually just crushed it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And Favor of the Moon, I think, just did a lot of work too because it gets you resources. It is fast. It's only one resource to begin with. You're not playing this for like hiding them. You're playing them to reveal them as soon as you can.
Yep. 100%.
Okay, so some other things that we did play, and one card we didn't. We didn't play Fae, but it's another just curse synergy if you are a little
Yeah.
bit worried about.
Yeah. It's a good protection card too. Yeah.
Mhm. A lot of icons also. All right, so we played the Cryptic Grimoire. There's two of them. We played this one actually in both of our decks, and this one really wants you to draw and resolve the curse tokens, and as many as you can, really.
Yep.
If you get to do 5 of them, then you can spend 5 secrets and draw a card from your deck instead of the top card in the encounter deck, which is really, really good.
Yes.
And we had great fun with that. I had it, you had it. You were really building around it. I was just having it for fun, and it did so much work. Your plan was taking as many tests as possible.
Yeah.
It probably didn't fire off as much as you had planned for whatever reason.
Yeah, so I think a big thing was that I put in the Favor of the Moons too late because, like, going back to the previous point,
Hmm.
you want to be able to trigger this on command, um, or cheat it, which I think it's a combo piece here to like add secrets in other ways. But like, if you're playing this cryptic, you're going to want to be drawing curse tokens on command and not just hoping,
Yep.
which is where Olive, if you can run it, like Daisy could, or if you're like being able to use Favor of the Moon to pull them on command, I think is a very important thing to do.
Hmm. And then you did play the Stygian Eye as well.
Yeah, I'd probably only play the card in effects like this where like the stats matter to you, but it's very easy to keep the bag full, and this card being free is really nice. I think it's a good payoff to curses, but I think you kind of like I think I'd only play it in like someone like Amanda because her card draw is insane, and you're able to play this like 3 times in a scenario, which I did. Turns out that's pretty powerful, and I think that was actually in Union and Disillusion,
Right.
which was kind of nutty.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah,
why you put it in the deck. I mean, you were like thinking about those circle tests. So that was
yeah,
good. I think I'd play it. So I wouldn't play it as I'm worried about the curse tokens, right? You're playing it
yeah.
because you can get advantage of using all of your skills.
Yes, exactly that. This is not like a curse mitigation card. This is a payoff for you have 10 curses in the bag.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the mistakes. So these were intended on being payoffs, I guess, in the Mystic class for curses, but uh no. Curse of
It
Aeons?
is
Yeah,
it
go ahead.
is really insane to see how they I don't want to say bungled, but I'm saying like bungled in like the least serious way possible, like with like stakes could never be lower. But like how they bungled the design where the level 0 cards were so powerful and the experience cards were so bad.
Hmm.
You know, like the high experience, like the payoffs, like the enablers were like so good and the payoffs were so bad. But it actually didn't matter because the enablers, like the Faustian and like they were just like so playable that you don't actually care that you can't play a payoff card like Curse of Aeons or Flute of the Outer Gods.
Right. I just want to talk about Curse of Aeons in particular because it looks like Blessing of Isis. So this is a nice little parallel to our conversation back then that you want to draw more than one, and then the payoff is
You still have to resolve a bad token.
two of them, really, and then you
Yeah.
get to choose to remove them from the chaos bag if you want, or you can leave them in because you probably want to. I mean, like it's acting almost like one of the covenants, but it's just bad. Why would you want to do this?
Yep. Yeah, and it's like even like you can see the intention as always. The skull card is that Jim can take advantage of it, and then it's just a -2. But that ain't worth it.
Mm.
That was just not worth it. It should have had some sort of effect where it replaced both of them, removed them, and like had some like big, nice positive effect.
Yeah, it needs. I would play it in gym if it were, and you draw a card, and you gain two
Yeah, if it
resources, or
was
something like
if it
that.
was yeah, if it was like draw two cards, I'd be like, boom, put it in here, right?
Hmm.
Like that would be super sick.
Yeah, but
But it
otherwise,
just
like
doesn't actually do anything. Yeah.
you might as well play the jewel, right? This just,
Yep.
yeah. Um, Alternatively, like again, this almost goes against the Eye of Chaos, right? Because you're canceling the second curse token where you actually want to draw multiple at once. So
Yep.
it's kind of weird and anti-synergistic with that in the first place. But
Yeah, the higher end is kind of just confused of what curse tokens we're building towards, at least on the mystic side. I think
yeah,
like like the seeker and rogue were really good
yes.
for like what you were building towards, but the mystic not so much.
Hmm. The rogue ones we're all going to see in a future video because they are also bless oriented too. They're
Yeah,
paradoxical.
they're more payoff to paradoxical or like I don't these curse tokens don't matter,
Hmm.
excuse me.
Yeah. But it's just sad to see this because Blessing of Isis is so cool because Elder
Yep.
Signs are generally good and interesting. And this is just like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So I mentioned before the taboo changed things slightly. So we mentioned Voice of Ra in the last video about how that made bless tokens, but any symbol tokens really, really good. Ritual Candles gets a special mention here, as does Dark Prophecy, because now you get to either mitigate the curses a little bit better, or you're trying to draw one. So Dark
Have another way
Prophecy,
to
yeah,
to
gets you to
grab
do
them
it
out.
on
Yes.
command. Hmm.
Yep, very nice.
Yeah, that's all I'll
Um
say about that, I guess. Anything to add?
yeah. I like the two ritual candles for curse tokens. It's a very fun way to mitigate. You feel like a baller when
Yeah.
they just don't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. When I played Kohaku back in the day, not back in the day, it's like almost a year ago. That was kind of my way of doing it. I had like two ritual candles and then I had a cult reliquary for the book and
Yep.
it felt good.
Yep.
All right. Then we also got some cursed parallel investigators. And for whatever reason, they really pushed in the parallel investigators the curse tokens. There's one bless investigator that was parallel Father Mateo, and then kind of Wendy. But man, they really wanted us to explore this archetype more with these guys. And I have to say, I've never played any of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I like parallel investigators because it allows them to do designs that they wouldn't release in an actual box, right?
Hmm.
They're a little bit more experimental and weird. Like Jim Culver, for example, he's very over designed, but I would rather them do those weird designs as parallel investigators when they don't actually like they're not real, right?
Hmm.
You're not paying for them. And the Rex one is also a little bit strange. I think that they're not really like the problem with these guys is they're not really like a payoff to curses, and with curses you're kind of looking for a payoff, right? And I think that's kind of the issue where like Parallel Zoe and Parallel Father Mateo, are payoffs to bless. These guys, they're not really payoffs. They're just like, I know like Jim Culver has it where he can put charges on stuff.
Hmm.
So like there is that, but like that's just a Kachi baby.
Yeah. Yeah, not I think you're right that this is a good place for these guys to exist, but I don't think they did enough for, or at least for me, for the archetype.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to Hemlock Veil then, which had some additional cards that were mitigators. So we've got a cursed, or cursed, which is allows you to add curse tokens in because they really want better ways of you adding curse tokens in this set. But also, in case you do draw them, you to turn them into zero modifiers, which I guess is nice, but I've never played the card.
Nah, yeah, it's just I understand like the design behind a cursed. It's there for if you don't have Innsmouth, you need a way to add curse tokens, right? You see that kind of like in the design where there's
Mhm.
like some card that looks funky if you look at the big picture, but if you look at just at Hemlock, you're like, oh, I want to add curse tokens. But because I'm not playing current, because I don't know
Mhm.
what current is, I'm not looking at a cursed.
Diabolical Luck is, I guess, another version of False Covenant, then, kind of.
Yes, I really like Diabolical Luck in my level 0 decks. If anyone on my group or I am running Curse,
Hmm.
because I think that that is when you're at like your weakest before you can buy a Covenant or some way to mitigate Curse tokens. Diabolical Luck is just a good way to just say no, that doesn't real. That's not real, right? I think it's a good level 0 option.
Yeah, I like it too. And
Yeah.
then we see Purified, which just can remove curse tokens. It's more of a bless or paradoxical one, but it's got that option there, which is similar to the Predestined card, which I didn't put on the slide, that lets you remove curse tokens.
That's the Survivor one, right?
Yeah, it's the Survivor skill
Yeah.
that looks like Take Heart. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's not a good card. But this one allows you, I suppose if your sister Mary, you could play this to get rid of the curse tokens that get added in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then Dawnstar is a card that is similar to a cursed where you are treating the modifiers as zero, or I guess you're
Yeah.
ignoring them entirely, which is almost the same thing. And then it allows you to deal damage too. And we thought about running this in our run, but we didn't.
Yeah, I think it probably would have been fine. I think the card overall, though, is kind of just like, again, unless you're pulling curse tokens on command, it's a little bit awkward. And then
Hmm.
it has that same sort of Armageddon issue where you're dreaming for that thing where you draw a bunch, but that just rarely happens when you have it in your hand.
Yeah, like what do you do? Do you save this card for when there's a bunch of enemies? Do you save this card
Yeah.
when you wouldn't pass the test otherwise?
Yeah, or do you just like use it on your first test to deal damage? It's a very awkward card to actually play with in practice.
Hmm. All right. Um, we do have more ways of throwing curse tokens in the bag. So I think that's the big highlight to me for this set is these are different versions, I suppose, of I mean, they're not exactly like the Faustian Bargain, Promise of Power, Deep Knowledge, because those are so generically good.
Mhm.
These ask a bit more of you because you're kind of committing to the idea. I think Scrimshaw Charm is nuts. It adds
It's
so many curse tokens in and gives you a
it's
lot of
banned at our
resources.
table.
It's banned.
Yeah, Travis is not allowed to play Scrimshaw Charm ever again.
Oh no, what happened?
He just put in too many curse tokens. He used it like every turn, and it caused Bryn and I to just crumble because we like it's one of those things you need to have curse mitigation for the group.
Hmm.
And this is why I jokingly say Travis is good he doesn't play rogue because he's probably the most rogue player ever. Where it's just like I'm a big money deck. I need the resources.
Yep.
It is just very efficient for getting money and very good at getting curse tokens in the bag, and it's very dangerous because of that.
Yeah, that's true. So Faustian Bargain is a little bit, I don't know, it's nice because it's just once. You just put the
Yep.
two curses in, you get the money, you're done. This kind of incentivizes you to take this action every round, right?
Yeah, and this is where the difference is when I was talking about earlier how are you a curse deck or not? If you're playing Faustian Bargain, you're not a curse deck. If you're playing Scrimshaw Charm, congratulations, you're a curse deck.
All right. Wicked of Thame, have you played this one?
Yeah, it's not great. It's this goes a video we were just recording for PBG where I was talking about every. I always get tricked by this is the weapon that mystics need to deal damage
Hmm.
to save on their spells. Turns out it's fine. It's playable, but it's still just like a little bit awkward to add those curse tokens, and you feel it more in comparison to other things. Like if Mystics had a way, it was like add in, it was like a drawn to the flame, but like it was like deal 2 damage, but add 3 curse tokens. That would be a lot better than this would.
Yeah, so I was going to say something very similar. I wish this were an event because
Yep.
I don't want to have to do this all the time.
Yep.
But the
Yep.
+2 is really good for each curse token. You can get up like +6. That's
I
good.
would love like a level 0. I mean, I guess we kind of have it with the card that I literally accursed. I literally just forgot the name of. It's kind of there for like a single punch action, right? It's like the same kind of philosophy, but I agree. This would be a lot better if it was an event. I only want to do this once or twice in a scenario.
That said, if you can take advantage of the replenishing a charge thing, it's kind of neat. I played this once in a campaign with Lily Chen,
Yep.
and the idea
Yeah,
was
Lily would like it. Yeah.
the idea was to
You only need to add
replenish.
one.
Yeah, I only had one, and I was replenishing the Enchanted Blade level 3.
Yeah, that seems sick. Yeah, that seems sick.
It was good. The problem is it's a lot of actions, and it's like I don't know. I mean, it was definitely good. It healed a lot of horror. It drew me a lot of cards, but and this is the problem with weapons at less than level 5 is that you're like, well, it could have been just one runic axe.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, never mind that. Call of Beyond is another way to add curse tokens in the bag, and then you get to replenish a bunch of charges or secrets. It could, replenish all of those on a enchant blade, for example. Not
Yeah.
maybe for Lily Chen since you can't take this, but
I love Call of Beyond because you also get to activate it, right? You also get
Yep.
to activate the weapon or asset or spell.
Yep.
I love this card. This since in a similar boat of Faustian Bargain and Deep Knowledge, where this is like the cost of the card is the curse tokens, and the effect is very powerful. I really like Call of Beyond.
Yeah, 3 curse tokens I think is fair for this. It's level 2.
Yeah.
It gets you a
I
free
mean, like,
action and
and it
all
gives
of
you
the
an
charges.
action, yeah, and you're using it on like your big things or like you're usually refilling experience cost cards, so like that's really nice.
And then there's another card here. Let's go on to the next slide.
Yeah, bye, Antediluvian him.
All right, so these are the Seeker ones. I think all the ones on the previous one were Mystic. No, one Rogue card. You can get one more look at that double card. Anyway,
Yeah.
so these 2 cards at the top are again very similar. You're adding curse tokens to the bag for a cost, but for Prismatic Spectacles, it's also asking you to draw the curse tokens. So it's like Eye of Chaos. I have not played with this one yet.
It's fine. It's this is like when I said earlier in this video where Bless got a much bigger boost in Feast of Hemlock Veil. You can actually see us kind of just talking about these cursed cards more being like, they're fine. And the reason is like, there's no promise of power or Faustian bargain. I mean, there is kind of a promise of power on this page, but it's very different than promise of power. But like all these payoff effects in Curse are good and fair. I think Curse, they really figured out what they should have been doing from the get-go. And I think that's a big reason why these cards just feel a lot more fair.
And they feel like they're more part of a cohesive deck idea, right?
Yes, yeah.
Gabriel Carrillo, this guy is really nice too. In Seeker, drawing cards is great. Adding a curse token is probably fine because of all of those cards that we talked about in Innsmouth and in Hemlock Veil that want you to have them in the bag. So why not just get a free card for that effort?
Yeah.
He's like a cursed follower, right?
Yes, yeah. You pull the hood down and it's Gabriel underneath the hood.
Exactly.
I feel like this guy, a lot of the conversation when we were first seeing this guy was we should play him. He's great. He's going to be awesome. But as the sun rises and sunsets, Dr. Milan took his seat in the ally slot for Seekers. And I think it's a big reason is that Gabriel Carrillo is kind of a cursed deck card, right? Like a cursed follower, he's adding one in every turn because what are you going to do? Not draw a card? Then why are you playing him over Dr. Milan, right? Or Jeremiah Kirby, who also draws cards in bulk, right? And I think that's kind of like the thing that he ultimately settled more into curse decks than not curse decks, which again have like their own like thing around them.
Which is good.
Yes, yeah.
This is the problem I had with curse decks not curse decks, with curse cards from Innsmouth is that they didn't really need to be played in the rest of the archetype.
Yeah,
And they probably should have been. So that's why I like Esoteric Method as a fixed Promise of Power, because you don't really want to play this except for you would like to have a bunch of curses, maybe, right?
yeah,
In the because like if you commit this and you're not a curse deck and you succeed by I don't know 4, 6, it's
you got a
possible, right?
problem. Yeah, you got a problem.
You got a problem.
Yeah, you just made a big problem for you and the team.
However, if you want the curse tokens in the bag and you commit this on turn 1 and fill up the bag because you're Amanda Sharp, you don't have a problem. You are sitting pretty.
That's great. Yeah, control variable is like a perfect curse card. It's also like
Yeah.
a great foil to what Promise of Power is. I
Hmm.
think the design is incredible, but you're only playing it in curse decks because, like you said, if you pass up by 6, everyone's looking at you and it's like, "Yo, why did you just dread curse us for a basic investigate?"
Exactly. Uh,
Yeah,
all right, here's a few more cards. I think you just mentioned control variable. You meant esoteric method. Here's
I did.
control
I
variable.
did. Yes, yes, I did.
You did play this one, and I think it's a nice working a hunch
Yeah,
side grade.
yeah. It's a nice level 0 card. You probably cut it out midway to mid high way through the campaign, but it works really nice in a curse deck.
Hmm.
It's that's another thing, as I mentioned earlier, having a way to control when and why you get rid of like curses. It's a
Hmm.
very nice option for that.
And then Speak to the Dead. I think I played that in this Lily Chen deck I was mentioning before,
Yeah,
and it was. I mean, if you have some spare actions and you want to recur things, it's fine. It was nice to bring back a Spectral Razor or something. It's not always going to make the cut. Like it's not
honestly,
good.
this could work in a Dragon Pole deck too.
Yes, I was going to say,
Yeah,
but it's if you it's a really cheap way to put um, something into your arcane slot. You might need that. I think it's fine.
yeah. I think Speak to the Dead is playable. I haven't done it yet, but I think it is actually all right.
I think I always spent 3 because I didn't
I
need
would try. Yeah,
that
my
many
my
times
gut
recursion.
instinct is I would want to do Olive in here as well,
Hmm, you could do that. Yep.
and then just like go like that. But I do think that, yeah, like 3 is the number, and you just basically get like 2 chances at recursion, which isn't bad for 1, especially if you're taking advantage of that spell slot in other ways.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's the Rod of Carnomagos. I didn't put all the
Probably,
rots here, but holy
yeah.
cow, it's a really good payoff for adding a crap ton of curses to the bag.
This is probably what we could call like the big mistake of the set, right? I think the design is really cool and really flavorful and really fun, and it was the card that I was most excited about from this cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done the weird curse, like the weird rule stuff you can do with it when you reveal it during the things, but
Yeah.
I think let's focus on just on the card itself. I do think that it is a great payoff for curse decks, right? The enemy control that this card brings is really good and
Insane.
very fun to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do think that outside of curse deck, there's a little bit of some issues with it. But if we're talking about this video just for curse tokens,
Yeah, just
I
for curse
really
tokens.
like it as a curse payoff. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think okay, so there's a level 0 version that makes you reveal 5 random and you just get a random rot if you get any curse.
Yeah.
And this one, the level 2 version, makes you same 5 tokens, but for each curse token you get to search
Choose.
and choose. Um, do you think this is a bit much for 2 XP?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so. It probably feels better at 3.
I mean, I'm
Um,
glad Daisy could take it, but
yes, I am too. I am too. Like I think it's like it's. I feel like it's one of those things where like in a perfect world, this would be a video game where after 3 turns the rots fall off, or like
mm,
after 2 turns the rots fall off, right?
hmm.
But in a board game, we can't have that level of control, right? Like that would just be too much table, like too much to keep track of at the table. So it's probably worth a better 3, but like I have no beef with playing Rodicarnima Ghost fairly. I think it's a very powerful payoff to curses. But uh I could definitely think it'd be still playable at 3.
I'm just thinking back to that run and how, again, I was Daisy, you were Amanda. You didn't have any enemy management really in your deck other than an early Transmogrify and a really good way of passing skill tests. And I somehow we got by in the Circle Undone, basically killing every enemy. I mean, not
Yep.
killing every enemy, but all the elite ones for sure, with
Yep.
one of these. And what did I have? The Gaze of Warash?
Yeah.
Something's
I
right.
think like
That's like
I
doesn't
think a
sound
big
right.
thing about Rod was that we had 10 curses in the bag all the time. Like if you miss on like 3 of like 7 Rod triggers, you're probably gonna really feel it. But we would only miss on like 1 of 7, right?
That's
Which
true.
is like, and even then, we actually usually probably missed on 0 of 7, right? It really changes the thing where I feel like because I've seen Rod played when only one person was doing the curses and
Hmm.
everyone else was mitigating it, and it was a lot less impressive.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Let's be okay. So to think about where curses are right now, I do think it's important to separate the situations that were I don't want to say the high rolls, but the Daisy Amanda team really showed off the fact that you can uh, leave the bag stuffed with curse tokens, and that is your plan, right?
Yep.
And anything that a different player, a different, I don't know, game plan for either of the investigators that wanted to remove them or do something else with them would have made this card, the Rod, much, much less effective.
Yep.
So there might be people out there who are saying, yeah, I played this card and it does something sometimes, but it couldn't be my whole game plan for non-elite enemies. And I would agree that that's probably a bad plan if you are not doing what we did, which was absolutely stuff that bag with curse tokens from turn one.
Yeah, and like leave it at 10 the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And that's why I think curse decks are so complicated.
mhm.
Is because there's different factors to turn how are you in the table taking advantage or mitigating curse tokens, because like you said, if one person is not, it suddenly just becomes a lot harder for you to get that consistency in triggering those curse tokens. And
Yeah,
then also we're going to get to this in a bit, but as a like little thing, if someone on your team doesn't want to play curse tokens, you're just making their time like the worst.
yeah. So maybe this card is okay at level two because you're spending your XP elsewhere to make this work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think it's like better for the game in terms of fun for this card to be 2.
Hmm.
Um because it is a great combo piece. And I think ultimately the discourse on like the I mean, I like the using it during the skill test during an Armageddon specifically because it feels like a big payoff to the curse deck.
Hmm.
It feels like it solves that problem I mentioned earlier of the Armageddon fantasy where you can't get multiple curse tokens in one test, right? I think it would probably be better if Rod of Carnomagos also had a cost, like maybe you had to spend a resource to swing it and it was like 0 to put into play, right?
That's kind of
Um,
cool. I like that idea.
I, I think like stuff like that might have made it also feel a little bit less of an issue. But I do think that this card can whiff, and I think when it does whiff, it can be very painful.
I don't know if it ever whiffed. Maybe it did once.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think it was like 1 or 2 times in the whole scenario for us. But like, if I like when I did like my first runs of Rod, I had like Ursula and
Uh,
Yorick,
yeah.
and like Ursula was putting curse tokens in, and I would miss like I said, like 3 out of 7. It's just like, oh, that sucks, right? But
Yeah, because you need another plan. And if you
yep,
don't have one, then you're kind of SOL.
yep, yep.
All right, let's wrap things up. One thing I want to mention before we get too much further into some more big discussion points, and maybe this is one of them, is compared to cards that just don't put curse tokens in, like Thorough Inquiry and Bank Job, people, when the Feast of Hemlock Veil came out and Bank Job was especially was shown, people said, well, why not just play Faustian Bargain? And there's a lot to unpack there, but regardless, for people who aren't playing a curse deck, is it worth the peace of mind to play Bank Job, spend the extra action and the 2 resources just to not have to worry about any curses coming down the line? I mean, this card I think is powerful in its own it's in its
Yeah,
own right, but does this take the place of Faustian Bargain for people who are just throwing in Faustian Bargain for no reason for curse synergy?
I think it does. I think both this and Thorough Inquiry especially
Especially,
that
yeah.
one, yeah, that worked really well over Deep Knowledge. Um, but yes, I think so. If you are all hesitant about Faustian Bargain, I think Bake Job does a very good job at filling that gap. However, if I could be controversial, I also think emergency cash still does a good job of filling that gap.
Mhm.
Um, so just like look at like what's best. But yes, I do think that like even though this bank job especially was very maligned when it was first released, turns out it actually is really good at what it does too.
It's good. It's so good. And thorough inquiry, I think you're right, is much better than deep knowledge for a lot of reasons, but one of which the icons on this card are insane.
Insane. I do wish that bank job had a similar. I wish it was like fist foot wild.
Hmm.
I think that would have been just like the perfect chef's kiss for this card.
Yeah. Why does the Seeker get the wild icon?
Yeah, the great one. I love. Yeah, yeah. And then like you look at the Survivor one,
Yeah.
and it also gets the double at 0, but everyone else is like in the experience cost. But Thorough Inquiry is a crazy card.
It's really nice. I used it in the Carolyn deck to great effect, and I don't put deep knowledge in my deck. I don't think it's
I
worth it.
as contrary to what I often say in these videos, I actually think Deep Knowledge is bad.
I mean, personally, I would just take an action to draw a card. Like that seems to be almost as good, and you don't have
Yeah,
a deck slot for it or the curses.
yeah, yeah.
But thorough inquiry,
But
though, it gets you much further into the deck.
yeah, I'm happy when people play Thorough Inquiry and Deep Knowledge. Right. I don't even actually play Faustian a lot anymore either. I don't know what's happening to me. I need to go to the doctor. But like I think these are good replacements for those, which I think is really nice.
All right, so let's bring it home. I have two big questions. One is just if you're thinking about playing a curse deck, like why go through the effort? What do curse decks do better than just playing the normal stuff instead of I mean, obviously it's only one type of curse deck, but instead of playing a Armageddon, why not just go with the tried and true Azure Flame or Shriveling
Mhm.
or the other stuff that we saw today too, which are different things, notably. But what do you think curse
So
decks do better?
I think what curse decks do better, taking away any talk of power level or any of this stuff, I think that they have a higher fantasy and a higher ceiling for what
Hmm.
they are capable of if everything works out perfectly. Um, this doesn't mean they need to be work out perfectly to function, but for example, if we look at our Daisy and Amanda run, those grimoires did really good. And we showed that there was a reason that we were playing those curse decks. And what do those curse decks do better than other things? They made it so that I, as Amandra, drew on average 4 to 6 less encounter cards in a scenario, right? Which turns out will win you the game
Hmm.
very easily,
Hmm.
right?
And you can't do
So,
that otherwise. There is no
no,
payoff that's like
yeah.
that.
So I think like the things that curse decks do better on the top end is that their fantasy is really high.
Hmm.
Because I'm not talking about just even like just including a Faustian, because on the low end that's not a curse deck, but on the high end I think the fantasy for what it can do and the payoffs generally go higher than other decks in a similar space.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that mystics often get this idea of you're playing with a power beyond you, right? That there's some backfiring on the spells, and it's funny that the mystic ones don't have that because they're kind of built into the idea of the curses themselves. That you're
Mhm.
maybe screwing things up for yourself or your team if you are leaning too far into curses. So I
Yeah.
like that curse decks have that. I don't want to say it's a delicate balance because you're supposed to be dealing with the problem. Um, but I think it's maybe just on the fun side of the puzzle of how do I make an effective deck that doesn't get totally bogged down by, the problems you created, right? Uh, so I like that about the curse decks in general. I don't
Mhm.
personally, I don't like the curse tokens that much when they're just thrown in randomly because if I'm not planning on dealing with the curses or like that's not what I want to do with my deck, I don't want to have to deal with them. That they
Yeah.
they do make a difference enough that it's just not fun. But I had so much fun playing the Daisy and Amanda decks in that run because everything we were thinking about was curse tokens.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just oh well, it would be nice to heal with spiritual spirit of humanity rather. Um, because it's a really cheap card
Mhm.
for the ability to heal and then just griefing other players, right?
Yeah.
Which is my second question here, which I might as well just get into. Do you need to keep the whole team in mind if you're bothering to do this in the first place?
Yes. That is yes, underlined, circled with a red pen, put into an envelope, and priority mailed back to you. Yes. It is the most important thing you need to keep in mind while playing a curse deck.
And I think that's true of less decks to some extent because you don't want your blessed tokens to be wasted or thrown away
Yeah.
when you really
Yeah.
wanted to draw them. But it's
I,
way
I,
more important here because it's actually a bad thing.
it's like a different keep in mind for the whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for blessed decks, you need to keep in mind that your teammates are selfish and they'll take your blessed tokens.
Yeah.
And the for the other one, it's like you need to remember that you are selfish and your teammate are also going to be drawing these curse tokens, right? And I think this also goes into the same thing. Whereas you as a player, um, you need to keep this in mind if someone else is bringing curse tokens. So, like, if someone on your team is like, I'm probably going to be putting some curse tokens in more than just two of a Faustian, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what can I do at level 0 to make this easier? And the answer is like, oh, maybe I'll play that Diabolical Luck, right?
Yeah.
Likewise, if you're going to buy a Covenant, I think that the best thing you can do if someone at your team is playing with curse tokens and you can play a Covenant. Likewise for blessed tokens. Like if someone at your team is playing with blessed tokens and you're like, I'm going to buy a Sacred Covenant just for you, right? Just to make this easier for the team, right? And you're going to make their day, right? You're going to make their deck so much better. As we saw
Yeah.
when you added the Sacred Covenant, it really changed the pace of our blessed tokens, right?
It sure did.
And then it's likewise with curse tokens. If you want to be playing Blasphemous Covenant to like mitigate that, you should. Like if you can run Blasphemous or False, do it. And then likewise, if you are playing curse tokens for the other people, you need to make the Blasphemous or the False a priority upgrade because it'll just make everyone win better if you do.
I learned that you had the blasphemous, as you said, with the in the thick of it, and I didn't put mine in until maybe scenario 3, and I admit I didn't realize that it was that important, but it was so important to have two of them on the table, not just like to use on me, but sometimes to use on you if you already used yours, and vice versa.
Yeah.
That made things go much more smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think you can play a curse deck without thinking about the whole team, and because again, the chaos bag is this shared thing you interact with, right?
Yes.
And that's unlike your deck, unlike other things I suppose in play, that you do need to think about that, and you don't want to grief the team by saying I'm going to play all these cards that put curses in. And yeah, like you can selfishly say, well, I need them to make my deck work, or it's just better for me to grab all these resources, etc. But I think you're just going to have a bad time, or other people will have a bad time, and there's
Yep.
no reason to do that, I think, in the game now.
And then likewise with gameplay patterns, if you are not taking like if you're not like a 10 curse deck build, which again you need to kind of have like the whole team working with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you also have to look at like when do I add curse tokens? I can't tell you the number of times I've seen someone with a Faustian bargain go from 6 to 11 resources and then end the scenario with 8, right? You don't need to do that. So it's also like keeping in mind like the table structure, how the scenario is looking. Do I need to play this Faustian bargain because I want to go into the double digits, or
Mm-hmm.
is it actually better to just commit it because the icons on a Faustian bargain are actually really good,
Yeah,
right? So
they
it's
are.
like it goes into that level of keeping the team in mind as well.
All right. Well, I think that's about it for this video. I think we've done a nice little retrospective of the curse tokens. Like overall, I like where things sit. I don't think
Yes.
I don't think curse tokens are. I don't know. I mean, they're worth it, right? That was sort of the question. They're worth it if you are building around them. They have a fair cost, I think, especially with the Hemlock cards. I think originally, I think it was a little bit toxic to have too much of like the Faustian Deep Knowledge, Promise of Power just be auto includes. But now I like what they did with the rest of the set to
Yeah.
make playing around them better, but also possible. We couldn't have done that cryptic grimoire nonsense without esoteric method.
Yeah. I'm also really curious because if I had to hazard a guess, the current environment when it does start is going to be Hemlock, Drowned City, and the newest cycle.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to see how Hemlock fares with just its curse cards in comparison to because we've had the Innsmouth curse cards forever, but we've never had just the
Hemlock ones.
Hemlock ones. So I'm curious to see how those fit in with all that when all that happens.
Covenants will
Like
be missed.
maybe for example, like Gabriel Carrillo will just like be someone you can play
Mm-hmm.
because it's a good way for you to drip curse tokens in to just pay off the other cards. I think it'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, Justin. And in the future, we'll tackle the paradoxical builds. Maybe.
Yay!
we played.
I think there's stuff to talk about there.
There
I think
is.
there's some.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we're not as high on that one as we are about this, because we finished the curse and the bless runs and at this point, and they were fun. I think we did a great job of just like showing off what those could do. So the other one,
yeah, it's there too.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, we'll see you next time.